Everybody ready? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. The Zoning Board of Adjustment for March 26, 2025 is now in session. Will everyone please stand for a salute to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Notice of the meeting has been satisfied in accordance with Chapter 231, PL 1975, by advertising in the Home News Tribune, notifying the Sentinel Publishing Company, and also the Star Ledger. Also posting on the bulletin board and filing with the Borough Clerk. Roll call.
Mr. Green,
Here.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Here.
Mr. Esposito.
Here.
Mr. Emma,
Here.
Mr. Bella.
Here.
Mrs. Gottstein. Mr. Castlegrant.
Here.
Ms. Casandi.
Under old business, we do not have any carryover applications at this time. So we'll start our first application, 2505, Michael, and I won't be able to pronounce your last name. You're going to have to help me with that.
Perfectly okay.
Of 76 William Street.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Balobnik, and,
One second.
Swear you in.
yeah, sure,
Raise your right hand.
Yeah.
You swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. My name is Michael Balobnik, and I happen to own the property, the Old Bridge section of Sayreville on William Street, 76 William Street. I purchased the property many years ago. I think it was 2008 or 2000. I believe it was 2008. Previously, I got the approval for single-family house on the property, but because of health condition, then we had the COVID-19, and I lost the approval based on time limitation because approvals valid only, I don't remember, either 1 or 2 years. So I haven't broke the ground within that period. Now I'm ready, and that's why I'm here.
Okay, I do have a couple of questions I'd like to ask you. I have read over your previous application that you put in. You appeared before the zoning board in 2009, am I correct?
Yes, I believe so.
And you were denied the application and you went to the Superior Court in New Brunswick before Judge Hurley,
Yes,
2010.
correct,
And it was brought back to the zoning board and you were approved.
correct.
Now, from 2012, when you were approved, until now, 2025, can you tell this board why you haven't been back or why you didn't start any construction on that premise at that time?
Okay, let me, I don't want to say repeat, but let me make it straight. I had health condition at that time. After that, once I got, thank God, I got back, we got hit with COVID-19. So that practically paralyzed the whole world, not only the whole country. And now, thank God, we are over it. And that's why I decided to resurrect practically the potential development of this property.
Okay, now, the home that you want to build now is different than the one that you originally came before this board on, am I correct?
Basically, it's the same architectural with some very minor changes.
Did you add another bedroom to it from the first application?
No. It was originally 4-bedroom. It's still now 4-bedroom.
And
Mr. Chairman, I can maybe give you some background to help you understand what the background was. Back in 2009, the application was made. The application originally was for a 4-bedroom, single-family home. During the hearings, there were concerns raised by area residents about the size of the building as well as flooding in the area. The applicant's attorney, Mr. Pape at the time, agreed to reduce the size of the house to 3 bedrooms. So it was revised to be 3 bedrooms. The application was denied by the board, as you indicated. It went to court, it was remanded back to this board, and there were conditions of the approval. There were requirements that they install drain pipes because there was a flooding problem in the area that the residents were complaining about. So the applicant agreed to install drainage pipes along the frontage of his property, as well as keep that 3-bedroom unit. So if you read the resolution, it does talk about 3 bedrooms.
I agree with everything you say, Mr. Colonel, but the point is the square footage was reduced.
I can comment on it. I'll tell you the differences between this application and the prior one. The original was 3 bedrooms, this is 4 bedrooms. The original front yard setback was 20 feet, he's now proposing 25. The side yard setback on the side street originally was 10, that's proposed to be 9. Lot coverage for the building before was 22.4%, now it's 24.5%, so that has increased. And the impervious coverage overall has gone from 32% to 44.6%. And I believe that's because you now have a longer driveway and a deck that's proposed on the back of the house, which wasn't part of the original approval.
Yeah, you're correct. The original one didn't have a deck.
Correct.
Correct.
So those are the differences between what originally was approved by the board and what's before you now.
Mr. Cornell, can you explain the drain pipe? I know that was a real issue.
Yeah, that's a good question. There was flooding in that area, and as you may realize, due to Sandy, a lot of the houses that were there are no longer there. In that area, there were no storm sewers, and they had pipes underneath individual driveways. So there was a concern that this driveway and the pipe underneath it were not adequate to carry the water making its way out to the river. So the applicant at that time agreed to increase the size of the pipe under his driveway. But since then, the borough has gone in and installed storm sewers and reconstructed William Street. So that's no longer an issue with this application because the borough went through and put large diameter storm sewer pipes. They put check valves to prevent the river water from backing into the development. So the drainage, as far as what the applicant was required to do before, is no longer applicable.
so what we're saying here is the drainage pipe under the driveway is no longer,
Correct. He no longer requires a pipe underneath his driveway. There used to be a drainage ditch along the frontage. The town put storm sewers in the street to take the storm water, so there's no longer a need for a ditch along the front of his property.
I was going to increase, as far as I remember, if you don't mind. I was going to increase the pipe to 18 inches to go underneath of apron of the driveway. But currently there is a 36-inch pipe installed by the borough.
Jay, wasn't one of the issues that the pipe wasn't on the property, so there was a question whether the zoning board had jurisdiction or not?
That was discussed,
Yeah.
but as part of the remand back to the court, the applicant did agree to go through and put that in, since that was one of the biggest concerns raised by all the neighbors that came to the hearing at that time.
Right.
you're the owner of the property, correct?
Yes.
And what you intend to do or what you want to do is build this house and then you're going to put it up on the market for sale?
I'm not sure yet. As a matter of fact, I was seriously thinking of moving in myself. I'm not getting younger, and I thought that would be very secluded area for the retirement for myself. But I'm not 100% sure yet. That's why I don't want to sound like I'm misleading or something.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, one more change that I forgot to mention. The elevation of the first floor of the dwelling has increased from the original approval. It originally was 13, now it's proposed to be 18.
Correct.
And then one of the other conditions of the prior approval was that you had to get the appropriate permits from the DEP to build in this area.
Correct.
So if the board is going to take action, that should still be a condition that he gets the appropriate permits from the state to allow him to build in that area.
Yes.
Jay, the floodplain elevations change between now and then?
They have, and your ordinance has changed with regard to your first floor elevations as a result of Sandy.
Any other questions of this applicant? Do you have any other witnesses that you're going to expect to call?
The only one I brought here is my engineer, Mr. Mark Leber, just in case if Mr. Cornell would have some questions or any other member of the board would have any questions, which I'm not capable, meaning I'm not professional engineer, to answer, then Mr. Leber would be able to.
Hey, do you have any questions for the engineer?
No, Mr. Chairman, I think really what you're looking at is bulk variances for this property based upon the lot width, the lot area, lot coverage, and total impervious coverage and front yard setbacks. So there's a number of variances that are required because it is a very small lot.
And you do know that you have to get the permits from the DEP concerning this, correct?
Yes, correct. It was, as a matter of fact, part of the original approval, and nothing changed. The South River is still there, so.
Because you are in a flood zone at that.
Correct, correct.
Anyone want to speak to Mr. Haber, the engineer?
Mr. Chairman. I have one question. On this bird's eye view, can you tell us where that, or at least tell me where the property is?
If you'll see, almost right in the middle of the picture, there is a house with a blue tarp in the back. Correct. If you could see blue tarp covering the roof, that's why the house was demolished. It was practically in irreparable condition.
So that the house is gone and that's your vacant lot?
Correct.
Okay, so this
So
picture is
The
quite
reason
old.
why I brought up that picture, it was made on Google, from Google in 2000, either 7 or 8, right before demolition of the house. But I had the picture, so I thought to bring it to your attention. The house was there for over a century.
Are these houses still there around the lot?
No, practically the houses, if you're facing the old house at my lot, on the left-hand side, those houses gone. Across the
These
street,
two
yeah,
up here.
2 houses, they gone.
And in the
The
back,
hou-
there's no houses?
No house in the, on the other side of David Street, and no house on the other side.
That one's gone?
Gone,
That one's gone?
gone.
So you're all by yourself? Okay.
Why do you think I want to move there myself?
Just make sure that's marked in as Exhibit A1, the aerial view.
Just one other question. So those houses are gone. I noticed on the list of owners, the Department of Environmental Protection is listed. Are those lots owned by?
Correct, the 2 lots on the left-hand side, those 2 neighbors sold it to Blue Acres. Actually, I remember it was a relatively young couple there with 2 children, and the house next to them was elderly lady. I remember I helped her a couple of times with her yard help, but very nice.
A lot of those lots around your house are Blue Acre lots.
Right, right. There were a lot of people sold it to the state. At that time, I offered to the state to buy my property because I thought they're gonna make one big park. But the state said Blue Acre Blue Acre plan or concept was only to buy primarily residences, not even secondary, only primarily. And they said vacant land, they are not interested in.
So in terms of what you're building, the setbacks, they don't really affect any nearby houses at all.
There are no houses to affect you. So,
Or no neighbors to complain about the water.
correct, correct.
Okay, in reference, getting the permits from the DEP, how long does that usually take to submit the application and get the permits back?
They typically have a 90-day review period after a complete application is submitted, but a lot of times it'll take longer than that. So I would say 6 months as probably the earliest.
Are you aware of that?
I hope I'll live that long.
Would have any other questions?
I have one question.
Sure.
You said all the other houses were bought out by the state?
Correct.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to open it to the public.
See if our planner has any questions.
I was going to ask a question about the setback from the front and the side. Originally, I guess from David Street, you had a setback of 10 feet, and now you have it at 9 feet. But the side yard setback is only required to be 8 feet, and you're holding 9. Any reason why you wouldn't hold the 8-foot side yard setback and still provide 10 feet from David Street, since that's a right-of-way?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. Number one, the whole house is only, I don't know if you paid attention, only 27 feet wide. 27 feet is the size of townhouse or condominium. So to push it even narrower,
Maybe I wasn't really clear. You have a 9-foot setback on the side yard and a 9-foot setback from David Street. Originally, you had a 10-foot setback from David Street.
they
So if you
changed
did an 8-foot setback from the side yard, which is the minimum required, you can still provide the 10 feet from David Street. It wouldn't change the size of the house. I'm just saying, slide the house over a foot, go to the minimum
Well,
side yard and
it's-
hold 10 feet.
yes, it's still road frontage, so I thought I'm keeping the same total.
You are in the center of the
But
house.
Just right, shift it a little
Okay,
back because there are no houses there anymore. Before it was houses there, so. And on the other hand, David Street, it's a dead-end street as well as William Street. So 1 foot wouldn't make any difference.
I just wondered why it was,
No, nobody drives there anyway.
I'd rather be further away from the right of way than the side yard, even if it was a foot, but that's,
That's
either way is
exactly-
fine.
That's exactly why I kind of moved it a little.
all right, thank
Only
you.
1 foot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You okay with that?
Yes. I think Jay had run through some of the variances, but the applicant has a lot size of 5,625 square feet, where 8,500 square feet is required. Minimum lot width of 80 feet, 45 feet is proposed. Actually, it exists. Front yard setback, 20 feet is required. Now it's going to be 9 feet from David's Road, where originally it was 10. Maximum building coverage, 20% minimum. On the last approval, it was 22.4, now it's 24.5. That's it.
Any other questions of the board? Hearing no other questions, now I'll open it to the public. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this application? Hearing none, I close the public portion. What is the pleasure of the board concerning this application?
Motion to approve.
Second the motion.
I have a motion to approve and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski,
I'll vote yes, but last time I voted no, but that's because there was houses nearby. But now you're all by yourself, so it's okay.
I didn't want to bring it up, but I remember that.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Esposito,
Yes.
Mr. Emma,
Yes.
Mr. Bella,
Yes.
Mrs. Gottstein. Yes. Mr. Castle Grant,
Yes.
Ms. Casandi.
Okay, the application's been approved. We will memorialize this at our next meeting next month. And that's it. We don't need you, Mark, in reference to the engineering part.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good night.
Okay. Our next application is 2502 2 Gowan Street.
Mr. Chairman, members, nice to see everybody. Larry Cali on behalf of the applicant, CPDI IOS, Sayreville LP. We appreciate you having us here tonight. I haven't seen this board in a while. Years ago, we had the DaVita Dialysis Center at the town center, at the Saybrook Town Center. You folks were wonderful, and we had that application before you. We're happy to be here tonight on this one. Mr. Chairman, members, I don't think we're going to take up all that much of your time on direct testimony this evening. It's a very simple application we've got for you tonight, but I'll let you know what we are here for, the relief we seek, and the witnesses you'll hear from shortly, Mr. Chair and members. For the record, it's 2 Gowan Street. It's lot 7 in block 333.01. We're a B3 zone. We're about an acre and a half property, about 66,000 square feet and change. There's an existing commercial use on the property. It's auto sales and repair. First Transit has been there for a number of years. There's multiple structures on the property. There's accessory parking areas, storage areas. There's also a cell tower on the property. The board probably remembers that. About 7 years ago, that was before this board for the telecommunications tower and equipment on an unrelated application, but that is on this property, the cell tower. Nothing about that cell tower is part of this application. The application tonight relates to the principal use of the property, which had always historically been there, which is the auto sales and repair under new ownership now. The applicant before the board is the current owner of the property. They proudly acquired it about a year ago. And the applicant is looking to bring on a new tenant to the property, Model One, who's a national recognized provider of sales and service, primarily to school buses and transit buses and shuttle buses around the country. So Model One is looking to locate their operations here for the same thing that's been there, auto sales and service of vehicles. They'll be on site. New inventory is going to be on site. You see on our site plan, our engineer will testify shortly what you're going to see on that site plan, which includes buses and shuttles on site for sales by appointment. There'll be service on site, very similar to today, but it's going to be the new operator, a very proven operator, a national operator with Model One. Our engineer will walk you through the operational details of what that tenant will do once they're here. We're essentially a conforming minor site plan. We submitted an application after extensive conversations I had with Andy, and he said, in an abundance of caution, because of the history before the board with the cell tower case, we think you should file a minor site plan. There was a question whether or not we're exacerbating that existing nonconformity on the site that was ratified by the board. I don't think we are, because we're not doing anything relative and vis-a-vis to the cell tower. We're just re-tenanting the existing permitted use that's there. But we had no problem filing the application with the board. That's what brings us here tonight, folks. There's existing nonconformities on the site. The structures that have been there are closer to the street than they should be. The lot coverage is slightly over. None of that is being exacerbated, intensifying, or changing by way of this application. This is really just a re-tenancy with some striping, some aesthetic improvements around the property, functional improvements, and things that will be safety and efficient improvements as well for that restriping and circulation that Dynamic Engineering has endeavored to undertake with this site plan on the property, and a single sign for the tenant. You're not going to drive by here and say, oh, let me stop in, but they do want their branding out there. They're going to propose a sign. It's on the plans. It's a like-kind exchange for what's there now as far as size and area goes. Simply says Model One with their branding logo on it. Our engineer will speak to that as well. So not much brings us here tonight except for this re-tenancy, but along with it comes a cleanup of the site. We think it's getting safer and more efficient. And this happens to be a lower demand operator. Our engineer will testify as to the parking assessment and circulation assessment that was prepared following our TRC with the borough, where the engineer undertook a few reports in conjunction with plan revisions. There was a sanitary and water report that was prepared by Dynamic Engineering. There was also a circulation and parking assessment. Overall, it's a dramatic site improvement from what was there under prior ownership. This is thematic of what this applicant does with the properties they own. They own several in New Jersey. They're growing their presence with sites that have outdoor storage, industrial uses, commercial uses, and truck uses. So this is very common and typical of the beautification and adaptive reuse improvements that we see with this applicant, CPIOS. I think I've said enough, Mr. Chairman. If there are no questions, what I'd like to do is introduce you to a first of our two witnesses, our civil engineer, Tom Torado of Dynamic Engineering. He's the scrivener of record, the plans that are filed before the board. We also have a professional planner with us, notwithstanding the fact that, we think that the relief is very limited and nominal. We can offer planning testimony to the extent the board thinks it's appropriate under the circumstances for this proposed retenancy. We can sort of feel that out after we get through the civil engineering, perhaps. We don't want to keep the board for more than you need to be here on this application, if we answer all of your questions.
Okay.
All right.
See,
Thank you, sir.
Hide behind you.
Yeah.
Just accept these. You want
Yeah.
to take that and probably stands?
Yeah, you want to, yeah.
I'll see. I'll use the podium.
Well, putting that. Hey.
Let's get you sworn in. Over here.
Right hand.
And thank you for the camera. It's letting me see just how bald I really am. So I'm going to go home feeling good tonight, everybody. I appreciate that.
If that extra mic working, you can use that one.
It's lit up. Yeah, I think you're good.
Testing. No. I can just use this if it's easier.
Let's raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in regard to this application, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
You are sworn.
Thank you. Tom, briefly for the benefit of the board, your background and credentials in the field of civil engineering, which is what we intend to qualify you as an applicant this evening.
Absolutely. So I am a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 2018. Since that point, I've worked for Dynamic Engineering Consultants for the last 7 or so years, where I've worked on a variety of projects, including industrial, residential, and commercial uses. I am a currently licensed professional engineer within the state of New Jersey, and my license is in good standing.
we accept your credentials. See.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Tom, you heard my proffer to the board as to what brings us here this evening. It's limited site improvements. It's mostly superficial, I'll describe them as. If you wouldn't mind taking the board on a tour of the property as to existing conditions, and then we can dive into the proposed limited improvements. And anything that wasn't filed, Tom, I'm not sure if anything on your deck wasn't submitted, but if it wasn't, we'll identify it and mark it accordingly.
I plan to just use 2 sheets from the submitted site plan, but if anything else needs to be presented, I'll mark that accordingly. Can you see this? Okay, that's good. Okay, great. So I'll start with existing conditions, then I'll move into what we are proposing with this application. As Mr. Cali stated, it's fairly minor in nature, mostly a retenancy. But I'll run through everything and answer any questions the board may have. So what you have in front of you is the aerial map exhibit. It's a sheet 2 of 4 of the previously submitted site plan set prepared by our office. It is dated January 17th, 2025, last revised March 7th, 2025. For reference, it's a scale of 1 inch equals 100 feet, and north is denoted to the top of the page. The property is located at 2 Gowen Street within the borough of Sayreville, block 333.01, lot 2, or lot 7, excuse me. The lot area is roughly 1.5 acres in size, with industrial uses to the west, with the Garden State Parkway beyond, industrial and commercial uses to the south and east, and wooded area to the north of the site. The property is currently located within the B3 Highway Business Zone, and the existing uses include a truck maintenance repair facility, which is a permitted use within the zone, and the previously mentioned telecommunication tower, which is a non-permitted use. The site is currently accessed off of Gowen Street with one 24.8 foot wide full movement driveway. The site currently has an existing 7,868 square foot 1-story building containing 5 service bays within. Several parking areas are located throughout the site. There's 11 rear employee spaces, 7 customer spaces in front of the lot, and 13 existing truck spaces in the rear. There's also an unstriped asphalt parking area to the west of the existing building, which functions as an employee parking lot under the existing use. There are 2 existing trash dumpsters located along the site frontage. And as previously mentioned, the existing cell tower to the east of the site with an associated 467 square foot maintenance building and a few associated sheds associated with the cell tower. There are a few existing non-bulk conformities associated with the site, as well as some existing design waivers, which include the minimum front yard setback, 50 feet is required where 20 feet currently exists, and the building and pavement coverage where 85% is permitted and 95.2% is currently exists. These, as well as a few other minor nonconformities, which are proposed to remain under the proposed application. If there are no questions on existing conditions, I'll move to the proposed. So now you have the site plan in front of you, which is sheet 3 of 4 of the previously submitted set, again, prepared by office, dated January 17th, 2025, last revised March 7th, 2025. Scale is 1 inch equals 30 feet, and again, north is to the top of the page. As Mr. Cali stated, most of the improvements are cosmetic in nature with no major disturbances proposed throughout the site. The proposed use is fairly similar to how it currently operates. The cell tower will remain untouched as part of this application, which again is non-permitted. And the new use will be an automobile sales and repair facility, which is a permitted use within this zone. The existing 1-story building is proposed to remain with no changes made to the building's exterior, aside from an in-kind replacement of the existing sign on the site, which you could see in the top right corner. A detail of that sign is roughly 50 feet in size, and it does conform with all sign requirements outlined within the borough's ordinance. The parking area is proposed to be reconfigured to add tandem parking spaces to the rear of the site, as well as through the existing western parking lot to the left-hand side of the page. So that'll be the orange and the red spaces are the proposed tandem parking spaces. The existing asphalt pavement areas are proposed to be milled and overlaid where required by the borough. The trash enclosure, there's a trash enclosure proposed along the front of the site. That is where the existing 2 dumpsters currently sit. Under current conditions, we are proposing to put in a formal enclosure to screen the dumpsters, clean up the frontage of the site a little bit. And we are proposing some new landscaping along the frontage of the site to screen the parking area and the trash enclosure together. In total, we were proposing 22 plantings, including a mix of evergreen trees, evergreen shrubs, and deciduous shrubs. In terms of parking, based on the borough code, we are required 24 parking spaces for the site. That's based on the amount of office space within the building and the number of bays associated with the building. So again, 24 parking spaces required. We are proposing a total of 106 total parking spaces proposed throughout the site, 11 of which will be dedicated for employees, which are the green spaces in the rear of the building. 11 will be dedicated for customer parking spaces, which is the blue in front of the building, which includes the 1 existing ADA space. And 88 will be tandem truck spaces for vehicles that are being sold here as well as serviced. Regarding operations, the site will essentially function as a commercial small bus and van dealership, performing sales and maintenance operations. The hours of operation will run from 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. On a daily basis. The employees are anticipated to start around 4 when the site opens, and as business grows and they build their local clientele, it'll max out at around 12 employees total. I would note that a few of those employees do include their sales team, which is a handful of employees who work from home on a daily basis. So you would probably not have more than 10 employees here on a average workday once the operation's in full swing. Regarding the vehicles on site, it's a mix of small cutaway buses and ADA compliant vans. The vans range from 12 to 14 feet in length, which is their most common vehicle. And the small buses would not exceed a 26 passenger vehicle, which is the shorter bus. It's maxed out at about 26 feet in length, but most of their vehicles are smaller than that. They anticipate roughly 40 to 50 commercial vehicles on site at one time, but that number fluctuates with demand. When they get orders, they will bring vehicles to the site and kind of adjust their fleet accordingly. Regarding sales, clients are mostly commercial in nature, not individuals. We're not expecting the average resident to drive by and stop in to buy a bus. mostly businesses, schools, nursing homes, commercial clients who would need a bus or a few buses for their fleet or vans. Orders would typically be placed ahead of time, either by phone or online, and picked up when ready or delivered to the customer directly. So there's a good chance that customers may never even need to come to the site to place their order or pick up their vehicles. I know there's a comment regarding if advertising would be proposed here. Aside from the sign, we're not proposing any advertising. We're not going to have a van, parked out front trying to increase business. That's not the intent of this property. So no additional advertising outside of the sign, which is more so just for wayfinding purposes for the business. There was another comment in one of the letters asking about the duration of how long vehicles will be on site. Just as a typical dealership would, they're trying to move vehicles as quickly as possible. Typically, they're trying to move vehicles within 30 to 45 days of receiving them on the property, so they shouldn't be sitting here for months, a year at a time before they are sold or moved. On the service end, the operations would provide bus and van maintenance as needed, which would exclude bodywork, painting, or any tire work that's not intended to be done on site. They would average, once the business is in full swing and fully operational, around 6 to 8 vehicles a day for service. And turnaround time on those vehicles for service is between a few hours to a few days, depending on how extensive the work is required. I know there was a comment usually concerned about storing the dirty oil on site, which is a fair concern. All that will be stored internal to the building in drums per code and will be picked up by a private hauler on an as-need basis. So you would not ever see the oil drums exterior to the building. I would note, as Mr. Cali stated, the applicant has 28 other functional locations similar to this use throughout the country, including Atlanta, Jacksonville, Charlotte. So they're very well aware of what they need to operate a site, and they view this property as something that fits their needs very well and feel that they can functionally operate their business from this property without any issue. Moving to the traffic impact, I know a traffic report was previously submitted by Dynamic Traffic. We have reviewed that summary report, and to summarize, based on the ITE, Institute of Transportation Engineering, the anticipated trip generation from this type of use would be only 15 trips in the AM peak hour and 35 trips in the PM peak hour. It should be noted that the number of new trips projected falls well below the NJDOT acceptable threshold of significant trips, which is 100 trips per hour. As such, it's not anticipated that this change in use will have any perceived impact on the traffic operation of the adjacent roadways. The existing building was also occupied by an auto body repair facility, which we previously noted, which generated a fairly significant amount of traffic to the adjacent roadway network. This traffic report that was submitted to provide a conservative analysis assumed no trip generation credit was taken from the existing use. So essentially looked at the site as a vacant site and then projected our trips, the trips of the proposed development on top of that. I would note that the operations of that existing use was more similar to a bus depot than a simple repair facility, where employees would come to the site, park, and then take their bus out to drive their route during the day. These drivers worked in 2 shifts and totaled upwards of 30 drivers working at one time. So you can imagine all the drivers came to the site at one time, parked their cars, took their buses out for their routes. A pretty intensive traffic generator the previous use was compared to what we're proposing here, which should be a fairly significant reduction in traffic. I know there were some comments regarding some minor discrepancies with that report. Since the time that report was prepared, there was some minor changes to the operations of this site, some minor changes in hours of operation and total employee numbers. However, those changes are fairly minor and have negligible impacts on the trips projected for this property. So we feel that the numbers do still represent fairly accurately how this site would operate. However, we can absolutely have that report updated as a condition of approval should the board vote favorably on this application tonight. With this application, there is one new design waiver requested, which is regarding the tandem parking spaces, which are not permitted within the borough. Just based on the site geometry, the proposed tandem spaces make the most practical sense to configure the site and optimize the space. I would note that the tandem spaces will be used almost exclusively for the inventory vehicles, and vehicles to be serviced. So it would not be for the customers, it would not be for the employees, it would not be for any vehicles that would need to be moved frequently. So we feel that the tandem spaces do function here properly without any issue regarding safety or circulation of the site. There was also a bulk variance identified as a result of the proposed development regarding the trash enclosure being located within the front yard. Our planner will touch on that a little bit more, but I would just note that this is the same location that the existing dumpsters were previously located, and the most practical location for refuse pickup, so that the truck does not have to traverse a fairly tight site internally for a large refuse vehicle. It'd just be, optimal for the truck to come in, pull in, pick up the trash, and be able to leave in a safe and efficient manner. I would also note that the enclosure will also be screened. Not only by the enclosure itself will screen the dumpsters, but we are proposing a fair amount of landscaping in that general area to block the view of that enclosure. And there was a second D2 variance identified for the increased intensity of the use. That more so relates to the cell tower, which again is not being touched. But again, I'll defer to the planner who will touch on that a little bit more to justify that variance. And with that, I'll conclude my direct testimony, but happy to answer any questions the board or professionals may have.
Board members have any questions?
There's a mention of off-street loading.
Mhm.
Where is the off-street loading taking place?
Absolutely. So the area in the Peach right there would be the ideal area we would have our loading occur. Depending on the type of vehicle, some vehicles can come inside, circulate into the site, and we would load internally. Say it was a flatbed picking up a van, they would be able to pull in here and load internal to the site.
But is it actually on Gowan? that
No,
you're
it's
doing?
on the property. It would not be in the road. We don't have a dedicated loading space per se that would be striped, but we do have areas where loading can take place in a safe manner, and it would not be on the road.
That's a good question. It's off the street. It's on the site that we're doing.
Okay.
It's a good point, good question.
And you mentioned the employees and something else needs to be updated. Do you know what those figures are?
Absolutely. So I believe the latest traffic report that was provided assumed 10 employees. We are now assuming a maximum of 12. So as I said, it would start around 4 or 5 employees, and as they grow, they would increase. But again, with that 12, you would have probably 2 or 3 of those employees being sales team members who work from home on a daily basis. So that 10 number is probably still accurate for how many would be there at a maximum. But again, we can absolutely have that updated. You can assume, if you had 2 more employees, that would be maybe 4 more trips in a day. Nothing extremely significant to the traffic numbers, but we're more than happy to have that updated and have your professionals review it to ensure there's no significant impacts.
So what you're saying, is to start, you're going to have 10 employees on staff at the facility, correct?
Well, to start, it's assumed around 4, just because the volume of business would be lower until the local clientele is built up. So they assume they would only need 4 employees to start. As business started to ramp up, they would add maybe 2 or 3 at a time and max out at that 12 number.
Max out at 12.
Correct.
So there'll be no more than 12 when you're,
That's what we're anticipating, correct.
and your hours of operation.
Typically, it would be 7 to 4:30,
Is that 7 days a week?
Monday through Friday.
I have another question.
Sure.
You mentioned that there's a proposed building signage.
Correct.
What's the proposed building? The building is there already.
Proposed building mounted signage. I'm sorry if I misspoke. So there's an existing sign on the building located in the front right corner, right here. And what we're proposing to replace it with is the sign detail on the top right of our plan. It's the same size. It's going to be a flat sign mounted on the building. And it's going to just be essentially 2 colors. I believe it's green and white, just with their company name, just for wayfinding purposes. If somebody's coming to the site to pick up a van, they want to identify the building appropriately. There's no lights associated with the sign or anything. So essentially, we're an exact replacement of what's there currently.
You have operation on Saturdays?
No operation on Saturdays or Sundays.
So it's just 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30,
7 to 4:30.
or 7 to 4:30.
Yes, I would note 7 to 4:30 is the hours is open to the public. Potentially you have an employee come in a half hour early to get set up, leave a half hour later, but the actual hours of operation for a customer to come would be 7 to 4:30.
Now, you also mentioned about selling vehicles, and you're talking about vans, small buses, et cetera. Are there cars included on this sales also?
No cars.
No cars?
No.
Just small buses and vans?
It would just be ADA accessible vans and the smaller size buses.
Vans might look like, but it's ADA.
An ADA van is the one that's modified so that the ramp can come out of it. I don't know if you're familiar with it. They lower the interior of the van and then it's ADA accessible. It would not be any standard vehicles without any ADA modifications or a bus.
And these vehicles are brand new or used?
I believe they're all new, correct? Predominantly new, yeah.
So it's just sales and service?
Correct.
Do you do any rentals?
Not out of this location. There will be no rentals.
I was down there today, looking at the area. Are you closed right now, or are you open?
We are not open at this time until we receive potential approval tonight. We won't be open.
Okay. I also noticed when I was down there were 3 school buses there. Are they there? What are they there for?
I'm being told they're not on the subject property. They may be next to the property.
They're not on your property at all?
You would have become a
Yeah,
testimony.
do you want to get any
Mr.
operation?
Chairman, yeah, we'll get you the answer from the applicant
Okay,
representative.
okay.
Mr. Hans, we'll swear him in and then he can answer your questions. Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, certainly.
Finish
Right.
with me, or you wanna?
Well,
Sorry,
we can answer that question quickly. It's one simple targeted question. so Maybe we could do it now.
Swear you in first. Sure.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth with regard to this application, so help you God.
I do.
You're sworn.
Yeah, so
Keith,
the,
well, first, your name for the record, Keith.
Sure,
Spell your last name and then your affiliation with the applicant, please.
sure, Keith Hans, Hontz. I'm with Dolphin Industrial. We're the operator for the applicant and we own and manage the property in question.
All right, Keith, so you heard the chairman's inquiry upon his site inspection. He thought he identified on our property
Mhm.
a few buses there today, with the question being essentially, are we operational today with this application? The answer is we are not. Mr. Trout
Yeah.
testified to that. Perhaps you could add some context and color as to the location of those buses. It
Sure.
sounds like they may not be on our property.
Correct. So those buses are located, I can talk pretty loud. Those buses are located over here on the west side of the property. So where our property ends, there's actually a green fence on the western side. And then there's a narrower strip where you saw those buses parked.
Yes.
That's actually the owner of the truck terminal at the end of Gowan Street. So that's.
All right, another question I have for you. That Gowan Street is a private street.
Correct.
It has nothing to do with the borough. Do you have an agreement with them, with that street or with contractors for snow removal, et cetera, on that street?
So right now, the street is being plowed and maintained by the borough. Is the way it's currently being operated. There is a maintenance sharing agreement between the 3 property owners. So it's our site at 2 Gallon, it's the truck terminal on the west, and then it's the whole equipment rental operator. And all 3 of those owners have a shared expense agreement, for lack of a better term, that, if there's potholes or things like that, all the parties share in the maintenance of that. But historically, and we found this out when we were acquiring the property, the prior owner and the adjacent owners, if there's a pothole, they're calling the borough's coming out, fixing the pothole, as a.
Less than organized solution so far,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, and what's happening out there seems to have been a handshake for decades, and it's working to the extent the borough is not doing the work themselves.
But the borough is in fact doing the snow removal on that.
Correct.
There's an agreement with the borough on that?
I don't know that there's an agreement with the borough. I just know that the borough is actively paving and salting the road, currently.
One of the things I am concerned about when I was down there today
Sure.
is that fire trucks, big fire trucks getting down that street, we have to make sure that there is no cars parked on Gowan, anywhere on Gowan, so that these emergency vehicles could get through.
It's a good point, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if it was a question, Mr. Hans, but it's an observation, and I'll say this. You heard Mr. Trotto testify as to the very large communities around the country that this tenant operates in large cities. They do so successfully and they thrive there. I don't think you're gonna have any issues from this tenant and this operator. We can't speak to other property owners. And these plans are all subject to review of interagencies and departments. If the fire department had any comments, wanted anything changed, I'm sure Dynamic Engineering, Mr. Trotto's office, would be glad to accommodate those changes. We've received no comments to date that there were any concerns or questions or requests for plan tweaks. But we hear you loud and clear. We agree with you.
The vehicles that you service, these are vehicles that you sold, or can anybody who has a small van or a small bus, would they service that too, or is it just your vehicles?
It would be both. It is open to anyone who owns a bus who can come here and get maintenance, or a van, but I believe there's agreements in place for, continued maintenance of vehicles that they do sell. So the intent is they sell a van or a bus, they would come back for routine maintenance or if there's any issues, but they're also open to doing repairs for outside vehicles as well.
And the routine maintenance that you're talking about oil change and rakes, et cetera, correct?
That, as well as some other items. As I mentioned, the only items that they would exclusively not handle on site would be bodywork, painting, and tires. Anything outside of that is possible to be done on site. It would be, the majority would be routine work, brakes, oil, things like that, but they would do some additional work as well, is my understanding.
What happens today essentially on site?
Correct. A very similar operation to how the current auto body shop is functioning, this similar services.
Now, the cars that you're going to sell, or the buses and the vans, these buses are kept outside on that one parking lot, which would be the red or the.
That would be the intent. The majority of the inventory would be kept in that western lot, which is all the red areas, correct?
And about how many, you're going to fill up that whole parking spot?
It depends. In speaking with the operator, they could have as few as 20. They could have upwards of 50. They know their space constraints. They would not order 30 buses to the site if they don't have room for it. But the intent is that the majority of the spaces would be occupied with vehicles, depending on demand, depending on orders. It kind of fluctuates with how the business is running.
And those vehicles are kept outside in that fenced-in area, correct?
Correct.
On that left side?
Correct.
And if there's a lot of them there, Mr. Chairman, that means we're not selling them, so we're doing something wrong, so.
Is there any security to protect those buses on site?
There is an existing fence and gates, security lights. They may install security cameras, but nothing, no guards, no extra security. Just a typical what a dealership would have.
How often do you get deliveries? Is it going to be throughout the day? Is it a couple times a week? I mean,
Parts would be less frequent, a few times a week, but if, Amazon, UPS, maybe on a daily basis. But no larger deliveries, not as frequent. Deliveries of vehicles would be on per order, when they need them. It's not going to be routine deliveries. So it's hard to say, but, when they get a large order, they'll have a larger delivery. If they may not have it for a few weeks, then they get a couple deliveries. So it kind of fluctuates with their orders.
Vans and buses delivered, are they driven there or are they on a truck that delivers them?
Great question. My understanding is that the vans are typically brought on a lower flatbed. The buses are a little too large for that. The buses will be driven onto the site.
Does this client represent like a particular brand of manufacturer of buses, or Or are the vehicles or just,
Forest River Bus.
so that's the only brand they'll be selling pretty much?
There are others, that seems to be the predominant.
Okay, so you're
manufacturer.
going to sell others too?
It could be, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So any deliveries that come in with the vans and Amazon and so on, they would be parking on Gowan?
I don't think they would have to park on the road. I believe that the tan space would be available for them to park. There are service bays there, but if they were just parking temporarily to drop off a package and leave, that would not be a problem for them to park there temporarily, but it would be off the road. So we don't anticipate Amazon or UPS having to park within Gallon for deliveries.
That's the reason I bring it up. When I was there, it is so busy with the tractor trailers.
Sure.
There was one in front of me, one coming behind me, and that's a very narrow road.
Sure.
And there's a lot of potholes. So
Mhm.
you're always trying to avoid it,
Absolutely.
but it was extremely busy. So I can't see anyone parking on Gowan.
Yeah, and that, again, that would not be our intent, and that would, the operator would not be parking on Gallon. It's hard to control Amazon deliveries, as you may know, where they park, with how they operate, but we can absolutely try to have that conversation with them and ensure that they know that they can park in the beige area, and try to get them off the road. And if it's a very busy road, I don't think they would want to park while tractor trailers are going in both directions, just logically, but you would hope that they would park somewhere smart.
How those drivers.
I know, it's hard to control them, right?
No, I'll add that delivery drivers, they're creatures of habit, right? They like to park in that spot every time when they get to that one house or that one building. So they already know where they like to park here, the UPS, the FedEx folks. We can certainly help educate them. That's always a part of the process. The good thing here is this is a lot better than the site is today too. So that might just help encourage them themselves to come onto the site more. It's less chaotic, it's more organized. We're more of a dormant user. So anything that may be happening off-site today on the street side will likely come on now that they know they can make maneuvers better. So under the proposed conditions, it should work better than it does today. And we can help educate those. It's going to be the same driver doing the same runs you would think for the daily providers. We can work with them.
Can we put no parking signs on the street? This is a private street.
Definitely.
How would that work? I don't know how that works with the town, but
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
town plowing, it's odd. A private street, we wouldn't need governing body approval. We would need, to be in concert with our neighbors to make sure that our neighbors are willing to do that. We can certainly agree to work with our neighbors and make a good faith effort to get the consolidated agreement of our neighboring property owners that access that street as well, to put up a no parking sign at certain locations.
It's not enforceable though.
It's not enforceable, no. It's what
Yeah.
the paper it's written on, right? But it's.
Yeah, that's all.
enforce it.
Nobody's gonna park there.
Yeah, and just for reference, for our property, we have parking spaces and then our service bays are here. So we have a small portion of our frontage that would even be parkable. Ideally, no one parks there, but I don't see anyone parking in the road in front of parking spaces or garage doors.
I'm not so sure you can answer this question because you're just going to start opening, but
I'll try my best.
what can you make a prediction of what the sales will be, whether your business will be more of sales of the vehicles or the repair or the maintenance of the vehicles, which is,
Percentage of service to sales, yeah.
50,
Right down the middle.
yeah, 50-50 is what they're
50-50?
anticipating, yeah.
Can't go wrong with that.
I must say that I haven't seen much advertising on this type of a business there. There's no signs out on Raritan Street. There's no signs anywhere. And when you go down there, if you're not familiar with this, you don't even know that your business exists.
Yeah, and then maybe that's the intent here. We want to be a quiet business, not a noisy neighbor. And I think they're gonna build their clientele internally. It's gonna be, again, commercial customers. Again, we're not advertising for the someone driving by to come in and buy a bus.
So basically, it's word of mouth and previous customers that you've had.
Yeah, and they have a sales team who's gonna reach out to, local schools, local businesses, local retirement homes, anyone who may need a bus or a van. I'm sure that's how they build most of their business, not by advertising on the building.
And these are not the big buses. These are the smaller type buses,
Correct.
correct?
The largest one is 26 feet. That's obviously not the full-size bus that a typical yellow school bus. 26 feet under is what they would have on site.
And Mr. Chairman, on the, how much activity will or won't be on the site, recall, in my proffer, Mr. Trotto's testimony, this is by appointment only. So we're not just taking passersby in off the street. Everything coming in is organized and efficient. It's all scheduled.
Does anything you're doing affect how they can get to the cell tower for that maintenance?
No, actually, it may be improved under existing conditions. So there are two gates that give access to the cell tower. Here, and then one would be internal to the site. Under existing conditions, there's actually a striped parking spot back here, kind of blocking that gate. And we're removing that just for open access. So it's actually improved from existing conditions, but they would still have full access, no restrictions for that.
Rights remain what they are.
Yeah, their lease
Correct.
rights are not changing.
And they have the parking for the maintenance of the cell tower, et cetera, correct?
It would be just as it is under existing conditions, correct? They would still have their ability to park and access and.
So they know when to come, when they do the maintenance. Has nothing to
Correct.
do with you, except it's on your property.
Absolutely correct.
It's got a quick question, just from a business standpoint. Is this a niche market? Who's your competitor? Is it the local mechanic? I don't think so, right? Because they don't really work on school buses.
Okay. We brought in some folks from Indianapolis.
No, I don't want a giant answer, I swear. I just want to know who's your competitors.
We'll introduce the operator
Yeah,
very
he wants to-
quickly.
he
We
wants
don't
to
mind.
talk.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, guys. I didn't mean that.
Come on up, Rob. We'll introduce you. We can just-
Okay.
Tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, this application, so help you God.
I do.
All right, you're under oath.
Robert Arndt, Regional Operations Manager for Model 1 commercial vehicles. To answer your question, sir, it is kind of a niche market. We predominantly sell to transit agencies like New Jersey Transit, New York Transit, school districts, things like that. So it's people that are in the industry we cater to. They kind of know who the players are, and we're one of the largest ones. So they kind of reach out to us. Our sales teams are dedicated to that. The people that typically look for our product do sales visits. A lot of our business is awarded via state, federal, local contracts. A lot of our businesses won by answering RFPs for specific vehicle purchases, similar to like how the township probably like advertises out for like emergency vehicles, things like that. They put the RFIs out, they put the RFPs out. Similar type of business model for us. We have a dedicated bids team that looks for those type of opportunities within the areas that we operate and reply to the RFIs, reply to the RFPs. Hopefully we win most of them, and then that's how we generate the sales.
Got it. Thank you.
And your last name again.
It's Arndt, ARNDT.
Your business is in New Jersey. You have another business in New Jersey also?
We have a current location that we'll be moving to this location from.
And your main office is in Dallas?
The main office, the corporate headquarters is in Indianapolis, Indiana.
I see.
Property ownership, Mr. Chairman, is based out of Texas, the owner of the property. Mr. Hans's company who testified. Mr. Arns is going to be the tenant
Yeah,
here.
we'd be the tenant.
And it's a business in New Jersey that business will move to Sayreville.
Yes, sir.
Where's that business now?
It's currently in the borough of Edison, I believe,
Edison
Edison,
Township, yeah.
Edison Township.
There's a reason for it moving?
It's an interim location. It's not a permanent. It was a Band-Aid while we were waiting to go through zoning here. The applicant, ownership and tenant had been ambitious. They wanted to get on the property, and this is going to head off the request I would presumptuously make of the board. They were hoping to get on the property, and then we were flagged for zoning, so we were at an impasse for several weeks. As you know, this process isn't terribly fast, although you folks got us to the board very quick, and we're grateful for that. It's just an interim location until they can get to the permanent one. Hopefully, it's here in the borough. Which is a good dovetail to the request of if this board were to vote favorably, what the applicant's request would be is that they can start applying for permits and maybe even start occupying the property. They're not going to start servicing vehicles or selling them now, but they want to start getting and mobilizing on the property sooner rather than later. There's a sensitivity with the school buses being a part of it. With the exception of the experts and the consultants, the closest person here came from 2 hours away, and several were on a flight here from Indiana to be here. So this is very significant to them. So, and they were at the tech meeting as well, our TCC meeting we had as well. So if we get to a point of a board deliberation and vote, the request of the applicant will be that the tenant can start applying to the building department. We realize that you folks don't control that, but that would be what the applicant's intent would be if you would be so gracious as to allow that recommendation and guide the building department to say, we have no problem with it as the Board of Adjustment, so they can start moving in and start doing something on the property while they get going in the interim between now and resolution adoption. I realize you're going to look to your council for that guidance, but not an uncommon ask. And in a situation like this, with the school buses being predominantly the user here for service and sales, it's a paramount concern to the applicant. So we'd ask that you consider that, please.
When's your lease up, Ed?
We're month to month currently.
I have another question. This ordinance for mandatory parking requirements says 24 spaces. In the detail, the breakdown, I come up with 23.
Do we do bad math, potentially? So 1 space per 300 square feet of sales office space. We have just under 1,200, so that's 4 spaces. 5 bays, 4 spaces per bay, that's another 20, so 24.
Where did you get the extra one from?
So the bays, there's 5 bays total, and there's 4 spaces required for each bay.
Okay, that's
So
20.
that's your 20. And then the square footage, we round up always just to be conservative. So that's where we got the 4 instead of the 3. I guess if you round down, you could get the 3, but
They're honest engineers. That's
yeah, we don't want
They
to.
went up.
And we have 106 spaces, so I think either way, we're there.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Google Street View, the fencing. After hours, the fencing doesn't close the road that goes into your back lot. That's gonna be open?
So there are 2 gates on the property. One closes off that western lot with the red spaces, and then there is a gate that closes off the front of the lot. Essentially here.
Okay.
So I believe the intent would be for both of those to be closed off hours for security purposes. Yeah.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I have a number of questions from my report. We had talked about getting a floor plan of the building. Could you just kind of walk through the floor plan?
Okay, so
Let's mark it just in case.
we're double checking if this was previously submitted, but I will mark it regardless.
You can identify Tom by title, and we can mark it with today's data as A1 if the board so permits.
Absolutely. So I don't see a title other than 2 Goen Street. It was provided by Wolf Architects Incorporated. And I don't see a date either, but I can mark it A1 is acceptable.
A1 with today's date, please, 3/26/25.
So essentially what you have in front of you is essentially a survey of the building. No changes to any walls, rooms are proposed. It's just the uses of each room is a little change from what's there currently. So starting from the left end of the site, that's the main shop space. There are 4 bays that give you access into there. That's where the main repairs would happen. Moving to the right side of the page, shop space. I'm not a mechanic, assuming that's where they would keep their equipment, parts, anything ancillary to the actual shop repair needs. An additional shop space is the big square in the middle of the site. There's some shop parts and storage areas there, a break room to the top, and then a few offices scattered throughout. So the sales admin space is in the front, another parts room in the back, some bathrooms mixed into the right-hand side. There is a second floor on the right side of the building for a conference room on the top floor, and then a sales and admin space. But essentially a mix of shop space for the repairs and maintenance, as well as some office space for the sales department.
So no showroom that's in the building?
No showroom, no.
That 1194 square foot of sales office. That's all the offices that are shown on that floor plan? Is that 1194?
So there is, I believe the breakdown, I actually have a markup. Give me just one moment. So there are 5 rooms that we considered office space. It would be the sales and admin space here. It would be the service and parts office here. And then it would be the sales admin space in the conference room. So these 5 spaces together equate to that 1,200-ish square foot. And that's where we're getting our parking demand from.
Thank you. And then the information provided talked about parts, storage and sales. Is there a retail parts area? Or how does the parts sales work?
Do you want to, you got sworn in already, sir? I don't want to misspeak.
So there's no direct sales to any customer out of this facility at all. The parts sales will be sold through the shop operation. So any retail shop operations, the parts being sold there will be sold to those customers.
Because there would be a parking requirement for a retail component, so it doesn't sound like you would
Yeah,
have
no,
that.
no, sir. All of our parts sales, direct sales is done out of main warehousing sites via the internet mainly.
That's good, thank you.
So if a part is sold, it's installed on the vehicle? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. So think like the preventative maintenance stuff and things that they've already touched on. So like brakes, brake pads. So I'd store brake pads on site to have them readily available to put on. Oil filters, air filters.
Rear view mirror or something?
Yes, sir. Yes,
They'd
sir.
be they'd be installed.
Yes, sir.
No one would be coming to pick
No,
up a
sir.
part that they're going to install themselves.
No, sir, not at this site.
Thank you.
Next question has to do with Gowan Street. You're proposing some landscaping basically off your property in that easement on Gowan Street.
Mhm.
And also you've got your, the blue parking area. Cars are kind of using that as a pull in, back out area. There's no restrictions in your easement agreement that would prevent that from happening?
No, that's correct. So we have an easement agreement for access, and I believe there was also a discussion with the current property owner and the owner of that right of way regarding the plantings, and they had no issue with that.
Thank you. Could you discuss the lighting on the site? We had raised questions at the TRC. You said you're going to keep existing. Just advise the board, safety and security, how the lighting will work.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are several building mounted lights currently on the building. It's like 7 lights in total on the building, which currently operate efficiently. There are no area lights currently on site, but there is a utility pole right in front of the lot with the red spaces with 2 lights mounted on it, assuming PSE&G lights or whatever utility company operates, that illuminates that portion of the lot. So no proposed light improvements are proposed here. We'd be more than happy to complete a light study as a condition of approval if that would satisfy the board to ensure that light levels are sufficient throughout. However, I would note the hours of operation, we're not operating at night. We would have the lights on probably dawn to dusk for security purposes. But happy to do a light study just to confirm that the levels are adequate.
I don't know that that's necessary. It's up to the board if you want to require that, but it sounds like they're meeting the intent.
The building. And I just was informed that all the lights were upgraded to LEDs recently as well. So there were some improvements made.
Thank you. The number of employees, you've got 11 employee parking places now. Your number may grow beyond that. Where would the additional employees park?
Yeah, I was informed that 12 would be the max. I would say that there is that striped area in the green space, which does front a bay where they would potentially access the service area. However, if it was an employee that needed a parking space, I'm sure they would be able to park there temporarily. And if they needed to access it for whatever reason, if they're employee of the lot, then that wouldn't be an issue. Also, as noted, the customer parking area would probably very rarely be used. The intent is not to park that whole area out so that if a customer came, they wouldn't have anywhere to park. However, I think 7 spaces is probably more than enough for customers, especially when the visits would be scheduled. So if an additional 1 or 2 employees needed a parking space, I'm sure that green area or the blue area would be an option as well. But as I mentioned, we're starting at about 4 employees, building up to potentially 12. with some of the sales staff working from home. So on a typical day, I wouldn't expect more than the 11 spaces that are provided.
I guess the last question is, the layout plan that you provided with the different shadings, would you be willing to accept as a condition of approval that those areas are the only areas that are going to be utilized for parking vehicles? What I'm getting at is where you've got the reddish color, you've got a 40-foot aisle. So that's going to remain a 40-foot aisle with tandem parking on each side. You're not going to have that 40-foot utilized for parking multiple vehicles, where that basically entire left parking area is for vehicle storage.
Yes, yes, we would agree to that.
Thank you.
One question. So
Hmm?
somebody's dropping off of a bus to be serviced. They drop it off and someone follows them in another car. They're not going to be waiting around, right?
Correct. I had the same question. That's correct. Just like a normal service shop, if you dropped your car off, maybe your wife would come pick you up, you would schedule a ride. Unless it's a quick repair, that would only take maybe an hour, maybe they would stay, but typically it's drop off, get a ride, come back, pick up your vehicle.
So if it is an hour, what does that person do? Is there a place for them to stay in the building? That's, some shops have places where customers can sit.
Yeah, there is a customer area, I'm being informed, where they could sit temporarily, but again, that wouldn't be a common theme. I don't think there would be many people waiting around. But there is space within the building allocated if a customer needed somewhere to wait, have a coffee while their vehicle is being serviced.
And this facility is the one that's going to be made where Edison closes and everything's coming here, correct?
Correct.
So Edison will be null and void after this gets established.
Correct. Edison was never the plan. It was just a temporary holding location until the approval is hopefully granted for this location. And this is the ideal location for them.
They always wanted to come to Sayreville, Mr. Chairman. Folks, we didn't get here fast enough. We had to wait in line.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Have you made your Middlesex County Planning Board application yet?
Not yet. I'm aware that we do need to submit to their office. We believe it'll be a letter of essentially no interest from them because we're not impacting their roads or stormwater, but we will make that submission. That's not a problem.
Mr. Fowler, do you have any questions?
I just wanted to confirm, I was reading at some point, so I wasn't always hearing everything that you had said. I apologize. But I know that you are just selling vans and small buses, no automobiles at all. Is the service just all small buses and vans, no automobiles also?
Correct.
And you had talked about the oil storage, which I had in my report. I also mentioned tires, and you said no tires, no painting, no water body works. There'll be no tires coming off and changed on site.
Correct. My understanding is that the disposal of tires is fairly expensive, so they don't want to embark in that endeavor. They're going to outsource that work to another shop. So that would not be the intent to do any tire work on site.
Thank you. The turning templates that you have on the last page of your plan sheet, you don't show any movements going into that area all the way to the west, the pink area. So how would a larger vehicle, if it was trailering in a van or a bus, how can they get in and out of there? Because that doesn't show in the template.
So the intent would be that they would not circulate into that area. The intent would be for them to, if they did drop off a vehicle, say, that they would pull into this middle area, drop it off, and then that car would be driven into there directly. We'd be happy to run that to confirm if that would be a possibility. I'm sure we can get it to work, even if they had to potentially pull in and back into that area, which seems to have enough space for that to work. But the intent would be that a larger vehicle would not circulate into that, left parking lot.
Thank you. And I'm assuming based on the way the operation is being explained that there'll be no vehicles that'll be stored on site and cannibalized for parts, that all the parts will come from.
Correct. That would not be the intent, not a salvage yard.
And then along with Jay's comment, in the resolution will be a condition you've already agreed to, there'll be no parking in any of those aisle spaces within your parking areas.
Mm-hmm.
But also, you did agree, that you would submit the plan to the Bureau of Fire Prevention, and that hopefully they will mark out, no parking, fire lane throughout the whole site, so it makes it very clear, even for people who are coming there, that they're not
Mhm.
supposed to be parking there. And for enforcement, we have the resolution, and hopefully we have the no parking fire lanes marked also.
Absolutely.
The handicap parking spaces or space that you show in the front on the south side of the building, how would a handicapped individual, I guess, maneuver to get in, where, I'm not sure where the doors are and if they're accessible, or not, but how would a handicapped individual get into the building as an employee, or a customer?
Yeah, so there's actually a door directly in front of that space. Here's where a door. I apologize for the door locations not being provided. However, there is the main door, which would lead to, I believe the sales office would be right there. So if a customer came that did need that accessibility, they would be able to enter the building directly adjacent to that
So
space.
if they got out of the space in the discharge area, there'd be room, to move in front of their vehicle to get into the.
Correct.
Thank you. Lighting you had addressed. And on the signage, there's two sections that address, signage and the ordinance. One of them for the B3 zone would allow a sign, actually a maximum, I think, of 85
Mhm.
square feet. In this instance, and you're proposing 50. But there's also a section for motor vehicle service stations, which allows for only a 6 square foot building sign and one above each door. So you may, I guess, as a matter, ask for a variance tonight so that you're covering yourself in both instances. But again, you look at the B3, which, I've done before, where your sign would be below
Yeah.
the square footage,
Yeah.
but under the section for motor vehicle service stations, you're exceeding that. Again, a 6
Understood.
square foot per bay. And then the trash enclosure is supposed to be able to hold an area for recyclables and trash. 10 by 10 doesn't seem like it would be able to manage that. Can that trash enclosure be made a little bit larger so you can fit two areas, one for trash and one for recyclables? Might be just a matter of a couple of feet.
I don't think that would be an issue. We're happy to accommodate that.
And I appreciate you following up, after our meeting, to add the landscaping and to provide the enclosure. I know it created the variance situation also, but again, that was because you were trying to meet our requests.
Absolutely.
But that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Your trash enclosure is only two sides closed, am I correct?
Two sides closed. It would be fully enclosed, so it's a chain link fence enclosure, 3 sides, and then the front would be a gate for
That's it.
access.
Okay.
I think it was 2 sides landscape, Mr. Chairman, instead of 3.
There's another fence around that fence. There's something on the drawing there. The dashed line, it looks like there's poles.
So the dash line with the X's would be where the enclosure itself.
The larger right rectangle with dashed lines and circles. Is that curbing?
That's the limits of the fence for this lot, so the fence runs on the property line, then comes.
Okay, all right, so that is a fence, okay.
Not fenced, correct.
Board have any other questions? Have any other witnesses?
We've got one, Mr. Chairman. We've got our professional planner with us. We know the board understands this application. You guys have asked perfect questions. We hope you've gotten all the answers you need so far, but we do have our planner. We know we're not underscoring the simplicity of the relief here. We know that there's a cell tower on site. We're here for a site plan relief and there's associated bulk relief, some of which we just talked about tonight, as well as potentially the D2. So one brief witness, Matt Flynn, project planner, we'll swear him and qualify him, and then we'll try to keep it moving fast.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening.
Swear to tell the truth, all the truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
This application, so good.
I do.
Matt, your name for the record, please spell your last name, provide an address.
Yeah, Matthew Flynn, Flynn. Business address is 101 Gibraltar Drive, Morris Plains, New Jersey. I have my professional planner's license in the state of New Jersey, as well as my AICP license. My education comes from Rutgers. I have my master's degree in planning and public policy. I have testified before Sayreville, either the zoning board or the planning board.
We'll accept your credentials.
Thank you, sir.
Proceed.
I'll just jump right in.
Please do.
Mr. Kelly. Yeah, so again, I'll be very brief on the planning end. I think this is a pretty straightforward application. We're essentially replacing one permitted use with another permitted use in the B3 zone. To the extent that we are proposing a change in the use of that building on the property is actually going to remain exactly the way it is. We're not expanding it in any way. And it really is substantially conforming in terms of the bulk requirements. The only bulk deviation that exists for that building is the front setback. And I think we heard tonight that that is relative to a private roadway, which is Gowan Street. It's not to any public roadway. It's not really going to hinder any aesthetic view sheds traveling along any public roadways. Like it was mentioned, I would say, to the extent that we do need a D2 variance for expansion of a non-conforming use. Again, we're not here proposing a newly proposed non-permitted use. That variance only relates to the telecommunications tower that exists and was approved on the property. We're not changing it. So again, even though that does result in a D variance because we're changing the rest of the site, I would say that that is actually probably, I think the board would agree, that's probably the most inconsequential element of this application is that tower that is going to remain exactly as is. So again, we are in the B3 zone. We heard the list of relief. Like I said, the D2 expansion of a non-conforming use. It's not for the proposed use, it's for that existing tower. The design waiver for the tandem spaces. It's typical of auto sales where we have that for the inventory spaces. The trash enclosure in the front yard, again, it's pretty much an existing location. We're not changing that. Like Mr. Cali mentioned, there is an established, I would say, circulation pattern that people are used to using on this site, and we are keeping that exactly as is. In terms of the signage, like the board professional noted, in terms of the motor vehicle service station signage square feet area, we would technically be looking at a variance, but we do comply with the signage square feet that's permitted in the B3 zone. Existing non-conforming conditions, again, that front setback where we have 20 feet to the existing building, we need 50 feet. And then impervious coverage. Again, both of those conditions are exactly to remain as is. So just real quick, just to go through the statutory criteria for all of that relief, the D2 expansion of a non-conforming use variance. Again, the essence of the test is not to redetermine whether that use belongs here in the first place. The essence really is site betterment. We need to look at everything that we're doing to improve the property. And in order to look at that, I think we can look to the municipal land use law, the purposes of zoning set forth therein. Purpose A, promotion of the general welfare. Again, it's a permitted use to effectuate the purpose of the B3 zone. This is a tenant that caters to school, state, local, federal agencies, really that keeps things going, running smoothly in terms of benefits to a community. Purpose G, variety of uses in appropriate locations. Again, this is a permitted use in the zone. And I think this does have good compatibility with everything else in the immediate area, namely along Gowan Street. Purpose I, desirable visual environment. Again, from a mass and scale standpoint, we are keeping that building exactly the same. We're not enlarging it, getting any closer to our neighbors or anything like that. And I think this does constitute better organization of that parking arrangement on the site. Purpose M is efficient use of land, again, retaining what's there and really improving upon it and making it function better. The flip side to that is the negative criteria, and just real quick, the zone conformance, we comply with lot area, lot depth, lot width, rear setback, side setback, and building coverage. So again, this is a substantially compliant application when we look at what's permitted in the zone. We heard that this does constitute a reduction in traffic from the previous use. This is something that is going to be by appointment only, so it is going to be well managed. It's an experienced tenant that's been doing this for a long time. And of course, we are remote from any residential properties. Again, a permitted use compatible with everything that's around us. So really, in conclusion, I would say all of that relief we're seeking is justified. This is an appropriate use of the space, really not a substantial departure from zoning or what we already had here as of right. And I would say approval is warranted for all those reasons. If there's anything else from Mr. Kelly, that's pretty
No,
much
sir, thank
what I
you.
have.
Mr. Chairman, I make Mr. Flynn available to any questions you and your consultants may have.
Any questions of the planner? Okay, no questions.
Thank you.
Make sure to open it for the public.
Going to open this to the public. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak in reference to this application? Anyone from the public? Hearing no one, I close the public portion. Mr. Cornell, you have anything else to add to this?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Fowler, you have anything to add to this? The board has heard all the testimony in reference to this application. What's the pleasure of the board concerning this application?
Make a motion to approve the application.
Second that. Just want to make sure that motion to approve is subject to the conditions that were mentioned. I have here that only the shaded areas on the site plan will be used for parking of vehicles. And have maximum of 12 employees. And I don't know if the board really wants to work with the neighbors to try to put up no parking on the street sign.
We'll do our best, as long as the language has to be finessed because we can't force compliance with a third party, but we will use best efforts, whatever value that might have. And if I could just add, if part of the motion could include the board's amendability that the applicant can start mobilizing on site prior to adoption of the resolution, that would be significant to the applicant as well. That was part of the request as well. If the board can consider that, we would appreciate it if the motion passes.
So hours of operation, I have 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, but employees may come or leave half hour earlier
Right.
Or later.
Right.
And no Saturday and Sunday operation?
There was testified no weekend operations, Mr. Chairman, correct?
And Mr. Chairman, they also agreed to, I guess, resize the trash enclosure to fit recycling
Recycling,
and
yes.
trash.
We did.
I have a motion and a second to approve this application with the restrictions and the things that we agreed upon. Roll call.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Mr. Emma.
Yes.
Mr. Bella.
Yes.
Mrs. Gottstein. Mr. Castle Grant.
Yes.
Ms. Cassandra.
Thank you very much, folks. We appreciate your time this evening and the board's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
And they start minutes or how's that? I know.
You guys do all the work on that. I just show up.
No, I don't think so.
Yep.
And we didn't pass the resolution, so.
That was part of it.
Yeah, Larry, I went to someone getting there.
No, but they can apply for permit. Yeah.
How about on site, working on site?
They're not gonna.
They work on site? I know. They get organized.
Correct. Yeah, okay. That's the one I heard. Yeah, I do have a problem with the site plan. I own the site right here, and I could just stay there, other things aren't taken care of. Yeah, you're outside. They'd be grateful. They flew in just to see me.
I just want to make sure that this is a condition or not a condition.
Right, yeah.
So I have to talk to the board for that.
Yeah, no.
So we're not talking later.
All you want to do is bring the equipment from Edison into Sayreville, correct?
Pretty much, that's all they want to do. They don't want to do any work on the site right now. They don't want to sell right now, and they also need to work out licensing, local permitting, so they can then apply to the state and say they're an operator here, because otherwise their state license is held at bay.
When you say equipment, you mean just the vehicles?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's
So you're just parking vehicles?
Yeah, basically the inventory. So the new bus inventory, right now I'm paying to keep it in several off-site lots because the Edison lot couldn't take it. So I got 50 units parked in 3 different lots and I'm paying a lease here and I'm paying rental at all these.
So it's just equipment and storage, no operation.
No operation.
Nothing in the building?
Yeah, we wouldn't operate until the COs and all the proper permitting and everything was.
Because,
Andy?
And he's saying yes.
Okay.
because next month, what we'll do is we memorialize the entire thing, and then that changes what you want to do. But you're just talking equipment, that's all.
Vehicles? The vehicles.
Basically, just the vehicles.
Okay.
Vehicles, and then, start moving the parts storage into the building, get the, yeah, get it organized, so once, we have all the COs and everything's blessing, we can go in, and I don't have, another 4 weeks to be, have the parts on the shelves and be able to pull parts and
It's
and
one
start
time,
operating.
4 weeks is a long time.
So what we're talking about right now is just the vehicles? Okay.
Andy, you have no trouble with this?
I'll work with it.
You would maintain your lanes also, like you follow the plan, you bring the vehicles on site.
Yeah, and we'll have to, we'll move them accordingly as the property owner needs to be able to complete striping and things like that. So, to meet all the requirements.
Okay, just.
Do we need to amend the motion that we made for this, or? All right,
Okay.
okay.
I think the best you folks do is say to Andy, you have no problem with it, and then.
He's the force on that.
Right, right.
Force on that.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate it. Have a good night, everybody.
So we're good with that? Just
Yeah.
vehicles?
Yeah,
Because when you say equipment, I don't want them to move anything into the building until they get approval, until they get the occupancy.
just vehicles.
Okay.
I'll check it every once in a while. In my spare time. The next thing, we have the resolutions. Has everyone had a chance to look over the resolution 2504, ECO engines, 507 Washington Road?
Yes. Yes.
It's a pleasure of the board concerning this resolution.
Make a motion to approve?
Second the motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve the 07 Washington Road. Roll call.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Gallo?
Yes.
Mr. Stockton? Yes. Mr. Castlebrand?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas? Yes.
Did I send the resolution for Clyde? This is good. It's just an update. It's a change of the dates.
We'll let it go. Okay, the Clyde Auto Engineering, recycling. We'll, memorialize that at our next meeting. Has everyone had the opportunity to look over the regular minutes meeting of February 26th?
Yes.
Yes.
Need a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the meeting. Roll call.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Mr. Emma?
Yes.
Mr. Bella?
Yes.
Mr. Boxton? Yes. Mr. Castlebrand?
Yes.
Mr. Song? Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
There was something about the financial disclosure. Well, can you explain that?
That's what you do every year.
Is it different than last year?
You just got a memo this year
Oh,
instead of me telling you about it.
Okay, all right, okay. I thought there was a change.
No, no, just, you got it in writing.
Last day. Is it done?
I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn? Second.
Meeting's adjourned.
Right.